Pokémon Legends Arceus is finally hitting shelves, and I personally think that this is the most important and potentially groundbreaking game for Game Freak since Pokémon Rosé. I'll get to that later, but to appreciate the magnitude of this project, let's talk about the recent track record first. I've been saying for a long time now that Pokémon is in dire need of a shape-up. At the end of the day, the formula that has made the series so fun to play initially has lost its luster after so many iterations of the same thing. Let's be honest, the last time Game Freak took major creative risks was probably when they released the 5th generation with the best, most engaging story to date. The majority of public opinion on Pokemon's mainline games really began to wane once X and Y came out. For years, we've been joking about trudging through the same simple storylines and the same outdated game mechanics. But there's a deeper issue at play with the newer titles outside of just the battling and the plot lines. I'm definitely looking back with rose-colored glasses, but back when these games were coming out on the Game Boy and the DS, there was just so much more charm, and exploring the various regions was a joy. However, when the switch to 3D was made, something was sort of lost in translation that really impacted the game's appeal. The frustrating thing about Pokemon's transition to 3D was that it just felt kinda lazy from the start. X and Y stood in this weird adolescent phase for the series as it didn't really know if it wanted to be 2D or 3D. And like me, the series still hasn't really been able to shake off its awkward phase. To be fair, Game Freak has tried to shake things up a bit in terms of gameplay, like when they added Mega Evolutions or when they switched away from gym leaders in Sun and Moon, but in reality I found that despite their efforts, they were kinda missing the point of what made Pokemon great to begin with for me. What makes the 3D Pokemon games even more frustrating is that we know that Nintendo is capable of giving their core franchises fresh life when transitioning to 3D. They did it flawlessly 25 years ago with Mario and Zelda. Actually, let's take a look at the Zelda franchise in particular, because for me, the one thing that both the early Pokemon games and the Zelda series do so well is providing that sense of novel adventure. However, Zelda was able to maintain that sense of adventure right when it made the leap to 3D. Now just imagine for a second if Ocarina of Time was given the same lazy treatment that was given to Pokemon. They would have just taken Link to the Past gameplay, tilted the camera angle down, slapped 3D textures on it, and called it a day. I mean, 2D Zelda games are great in their own right, but their mechanics applied to a 3D environment just wouldn't work. It would feel soulless, like something was missing. But Nintendo knew this, and so they retooled the gameplay to cater to the N64. For example, they overhauled the combat and camera system with the addition of Z-targeting, and they designed the map to maintain a feeling of vastness that provided the sense of adventure that Zelda fans have come to know and love. And this was exactly my problem with the 3D Pokemon games thus far. There were no innovations to adjust to the new 3D landscape. Just take the map and camera for example. Originally with the 2D games, the Pokemon was given the illusion that the world was bigger than it actually was, because the scope of your vision was confined to the eagle-eye view on your small screen. In this sense, the older handheld's limitations actually helped in creating that feeling of mystery and exploration in the regions. When they jumped to 3D, they kept their old philosophy of gameplay and level design, and the game suffered because of it. Seeing these half-baked areas through a similar fixed lens made the world around the player actually seem smaller because the illusion of scale was no longer there. You could fit way more of the environment on the screen at any given point, but because of this, the world felt shallow in these games. Rather than traversing a vast country, it was as though you were running around a dollhouse. Not to mention the lifelessness of the 3D character and Pokemon models, which haven't had a refresh in years. Why do they still look like this? Sword and Shield was really a tipping point where these issues became so pervasive that everybody was pissed. You could see more of the world than ever with the Switch hardware, and they adjusted the camera angles and expanded the player's periphery to flex this, but it was more obvious than ever that the game was essentially just designed as a string of hallways with some trainers and trees sprinkled in. That is until you get to the Wild Zone, which finally felt like the breath of fresh air that the franchise needed. Finally, they did away with fencing in the player and gave them an open playground to explore. Although I wished they designed the rest of the game this way, it was definitely a sign of exciting things to come. And this is finally where Pokémon Legends Arceus comes in. It seems to promise a lot of fixes that I've been wanting for ages. I understand that a lot of people are disappointed by the limited Pokédex and the seemingly empty world from the looks of the trailers, but I still believe that this will be the most exciting Pokemon game since Black and White. Regardless of whether the game will deliver everything we want, the fact that Game Freak is finally breaking its old formula is huge. The most important change coming for me is that Pokemon is finally overhauling the way in which you'll experience the world. Some people are upset that the game isn't actually open world, but honestly I don't even mind that, as long as they're able to bring back that sense of exploration which sucked me into the franchise to begin with, which it does seem to be providing by watching its gameplay. Through mechanical tweaks and world design, the game is presenting its world as a more open, expansive place, which should have been a priority as soon as they transitioned to 3D. 3D. The addition of more dynamic movement like rolling as well as a free camera are also small, subtle changes, but they go a long way in making navigating and interacting with the environments way more enjoyable and immersive. And more small additions such as updates to the Pokemon's animations and adding craftable resources also give the world a lot more believability and life. On top of this, Game Freak's shaking it up even more with some new battle mechanics like the addition of agile and strong styles to give new flavors to your Pokemon's moveset. But more importantly, for the point I'm trying to make, you can also move around the battlefield and even take damage from Pokemon yourself. Finally, there's no longer that awkward disconnect between the overworld and battle scene that we've become so used to. Yes, the gameplay shown off leaves some things to be desired, and Pokemon fans like myself are always going to find flaws in everything Game Freak does.
I made this for you! Now why don't you grow up?
But for the first time in a while, I'm extremely excited for a Pokemon game. Whether or not it's as great as it's cracked up to be, this is still undoubtedly a massive step in the right direction for the franchise as a whole, and will open the door to a much more intimate playstyle that I've been seeking since my first time playing Pokemon. Who knows, maybe down the line they'll incorporate a game into some VR shit. But for now, this is a great starting point that shows that the Pokemon franchise is interested in moving forward with innovation, and they're more open to taking risks rather than staying on the hamster wheel that printed them money for the last 20 plus years. So regardless of how the game turns out, I think this is still a huge win for fans. And if I didn't hype the game up enough yet, check this shit out.
Bands will make her dance. Bands will make her dance. These chicks clapping and they ain't using hands. Bands will make her dance.